What if your commander deck didn't cast big creatures? Because your tiny spirit tokens could become the big creatures. Hey, I'm Paul from Missing Lands, and I absolutely adore Commander. And when a deck really grabs me, I sit down, break it apart, and see what makes it tick. Today, we're heading into Jeskai colours, blue, red, and white, with a commander that looks like a fair spell slinger, but absolutely isn't. This is Kykar Wind's Fury. At first glance, Kykar just rewards you for casting non-creature spells by making little 1/1 flying spirits. Nice, efficient, very reasonable. But Kykar also lets you sacrifice those spirits for 1 red mana, which means those harmless little tokens are actually mana generation combo fuel. And in this deck, there are also secretly enormous monsters waiting to happen, because this isn't a normal Kykar spells deck, this is a Kykar Polymorph. The entire idea here is beautifully simple. We make a bunch of disposable spirit tokens, we run almost no creatures in the deck, and then we use polymorph style effects to turn those tokens into colossal, devastating threats straight from our library. No randomness, no hoping to hit something decent, just 1 spirit in and 1 game-ending creature out. And the best part? Because Kykar naturally produces tokens just by playing Magic, normally the combo pieces never feel forced. You're drawing cards, ramping, interacting with the table, and quietly building towards a moment where a 1/1 flyer suddenly turns into something the table absolutely cannot ignore. So in this deck tech, I'm going to break this down into 4 parts. First, how Kykar actually fuels the entire engine. Second, the polymorph package. Third, the creatures we're cheating into play. And fourth, the support shell that keeps this deck consistent and stops the whole plan collapsing. Let's start with Kykar himself, because understanding why this commander works is the key to understanding the entire deck. Kykar does 3 incredibly important things for us. First, he rewards us for casting non-creature spells by creating spirit tokens. That means every cantrip, every mana rock, every piece of interaction is quietly building a board presence for us without costing any additional resources. Second, those spirits fly, which sounds small, but it matters. They chip in for damage, they block opposing flyers, and most importantly, they're expendable bodies that opponents don't usually panic about. And third, and this is the part that really pushes Kykar over the edge, we can sacrifice those spirits to generate red mana. That means our tokens aren't just creatures, they're also little ritual effects. So once Kykar is on the battlefield, our deck effectively turns into this engine where spells make tokens, tokens make mana, that mana lets us cast more spells, which makes more tokens. And suddenly, we're doing a lot more than the table expected from what looked like a spell-slinging token deck. And that engine is exactly what enables the real plan. Because those spirit tokens aren't here to attack, they're here to be transformed. This is the heart of the deck. The cards that actually turn our harmless spirit tokens into something terrifying. And at its core, we're running a small suite of effects that all follow the same philosophy. Trade a Tiddler for a Titan. The obvious staple here is Polymorph itself. This is the original, the classic, the card the whole strategy is named after. 4 mana, target a creature, it disappears, and you reveal cards from the top of your library until you hit another creature and drop it straight onto the battlefield. In this deck, that's almost never a gamble. It's basically a guaranteed upgrade from tiny spirit into massive problem. Then we have Transmogrify, which is essentially Polymorph number 2, same idea, slightly different wording, different colour, but that redundancy is incredibly important to a deck like this. The more copies of this effect we see, the more consistent the deck becomes. But where this build gets more enticing is in the polymorph effects that double as interaction. Chaos Mutation, it's a great example of this. Not only can it flip one of our own tokens into a huge threat, it can also be used offensively to remove an opponent's creature, and sometimes even replace it with something much worse for them. It's unpredictable, a little chaotic, and very on theme for what this deck is trying to do. Reweave is another fantastic flex piece. It can target any permanent, which means it's perfectly happy turning one of our spirits into a win condition, but it can also remove a problematic permanent, enchantment, artifact, planeswalker, from an opponent if we need to. Having combo pieces that aren't dead outside of the combo is exactly what keeps this deck feeling smooth rather than fragile. And then there's Chaotic Transformation, which is one of the splashier options in the list that lets us transform multiple permanents at once, meaning we can upgrade one of our tokens while simultaneously messing with an opponent's board. Sometimes this turns into a huge swing turn where we gain a threat and disrupt theirs in the same spell. And those kind of momentum plays are exactly how this deck steals games. What I really like about this package is that not all of these cards are purely combo pieces. Some of them are genuine utility spells. If we draw them early, they can act as removal. If we draw them late, they become our win condition. And that flexibility means we're never sitting there with a handful of do nothing until I combo cards. We're always playing real magic, quietly setting up for the moment a spirit token suddenly becomes something the table absolutely wasn't ready for. Of course, this only works if what we're flipping into is actually worth the effort. So let's look at the creatures this deck is trying to cheat into play. The creature package in this deck is intentionally very small, but extremely high impact. We're not interested in fair value creatures here. Every single target needs to either dominate the board, generate overwhelming advantage, or immediately put us in a winning position. Some of the standout cards here are Hullbreaker Horror and Tidespout Tyrant. These are absolute all-stars. Because of their relentless synergy with all the cantrips in the deck, once one of these lands, the shell starts to play much more like a control deck where every spell becomes interaction. Jingataxius, Progress Tyrant, has another wonderfully devious feel to it. It's incredibly disruptive for opponents to play around, regardless of any benefit you gain from its doubling effects. Because mana values don't matter when we're cheating things into play, we can also run some of the more absurd, rarely seen threats. Serra's Emissary can give us an outrageous amount of protection, depending on the board state. Blazing Archon is more at home in a casual build, but still incredibly fun, and it can completely shut down combat-based decks. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, allows the rest of the table to start killing each other far more efficiently, while keeping you much safer from incoming damage. And then there's Avika, Enigma Goliath, which again rewards us for slinging spells, while also helping generate more tokens in case Kykar gets answered. A rule to remember, if a creature isn't terrifying to hit off a polymorph, it probably shouldn't be in the deck. Of course, even the best payoff creatures don't matter if we can't actually execute the plan. So the final piece of the puzzle is a support shell that keeps everything running smoothly. We run plenty of cheap cantrips to keep cards flowing and make spirit tokens efficiently. We include mana rocks so we're not completely reliant on Kykar surviving, and we run protection and interaction because the turn we try to polymorph is usually the turn the table realizes what's happening. I won't dwell on the support cards, but I will include my full deck list down below. I don't play a maximally optimized list because I play in a more casual pod, but it gives a good example of the kind of cards that you should be padding out the deck, as well as more examples of these polymorph effects I mentioned earlier. I'll give an honourable mention to the Sensei Divining Top. This is a cheap spell to trigger Kykar, but more importantly, its ability to help us tuck away a creature we want to spin into is incredibly valuable. Similarly, Brainstorm is worth highlighting for its ability to tuck payoff creatures back into the deck that we can polymorph into. Cards that provide scry effects or deck manipulation stand out much more than straight card draw for that exact reason as well. In terms of power level, Kykar Polymorph sits in a really interesting space. Built casually, it's explosive but perfectly reasonable for a mid-power pod. Push it harder with stronger interaction, tighter targets, then it can creep into a very high power territory surprisingly quickly, and some polymorph builds could be fringe CEDH. What I love most about it though is that it never feels oppressive early. You're just playing magic, casting spells, making tokens, but there's always this looming sense that at any moment, one harmless spirit could suddenly become something absolutely ridiculous. If you enjoy spell-heavy decks, clever deck building restrictions, and cinematic turns where the board suddenly flips in your favour, Kykar Polymorph is an absolute blast to play. If you enjoyed this deck tech, let me know what creatures you try and cheat into play, or if there's another version of Kykar that you prefer. I'm Paul from Missing Lands. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.